Hey Bookaholics, and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be giving you a list of series you'll be able to binge read really soon. For those of you who don't know, I am a binge reader. I much prefer reading a series all back to back instead of waiting or reading it over the course of release dates or just pacing myself. I want to consume the whole thing in one go. Therefore, I kind of keep an eye on when series are going to finish because I anticipate them for so long because I wait until they're all out. I know that there are things within publishing that is not helpful for, but at the end of the day, it's my preferred reading method. And I know that a lot of the time when a third book comes out, it does boost the sales of books 1 and 2. And that's me. I am one of the ones that is boosting the sales of books 1 and 2. So that's how I prefer to read. And you can have your opinions on that however you want to. That being said, I do keep track of when series are going to conclude. So I thought I would share that with you guys today. I have a list of series that have a date on Goodreads that they're definitely supposed to be coming out next year. I then have a list of books that, based on the trajectory of the series, the way that they have been released, it's entirely likely that they will be releasing next year. I have some that it is entirely possible, but that it's less assured because of the way that the publishing has been going with these series. I have ones that could conclude, but it's very unlikely. And then I have the ones that should conclude, but are definitely not going to. I'm going to kick off my list with the ones that are dated on Goodreads. We have a fixed date for them for when they're supposed to be releasing next year. So those are the ones that you are almost guaranteed to be able to binge next year if you want to. Now on here, I have two that are dated that I'm fairly certain the dates are wrong, but I am fairly certain are still coming out next year. The two that I have for that is that it's on Goodreads at the moment. The Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir is going to conclude on the 1st of January, which seems very unlikely. This would be book 4 in this series, which is supposedly lesbian necromancers in space. That's the tagline. I'm super excited for this series. It's so hyped. I hear it's very strange in the way it's told, but I'm excited for that too. This series started with Gideon the Ninth a few years back now, and we haven't had a steady one a year, but I do believe that Alecto, the last book, is supposed to be coming out next year, and I am really excited for it, but I don't think that it's going to be on the 1st of January. This tends to release around the end of the year. This tends to be an autumn release series, at least the previous installments have been. I think that the 1st of January there is possibly a mistake or just a way of confirming it's definitely coming out in 2024, but it won't be the 1st. Exactly the same issue with the final Red Rising book. Red Rising is a series that has a trilogy and then a quartet, so it will be either book 7 of the entire series or book 4 of this new second series, however you want to look at it, which would be concluding the series as a whole. And that one is going to be called Red God. This one is also at the moment on Goodreads, at least at the time of filming this, saying that it's going to be released on the 1st of January. Given that the second to last book released midway through last year, I don't think that it's going to be releasing that early on in the year. It's probably going to be more likely towards the latter end of 2024. So it's dated, but it's inaccurate. But I think when they put a date on it, it's at least quite certain that they are going to be releasing that year. We just don't know the exact date of these yet. Now getting into the ones that have much more believable release dates. They might be pushed backwards or forwards a little tiny bit, but for the most part, these are pretty accurate release dates. The first one I have is the Atlas trilogy by Olivia Blake is going to be concluding with the Atlas Complex. This started with the Atlas 6 a couple years ago, and it is a dark academia fantasy, I believe. I'm really excited to be getting into this. I really want to read Olivia Blake. She's an author that you can't escape at the moment, and all of her synopses sound amazing. And this one is supposed to be releasing on the 9th of January. The next one that's also going to be releasing in January 16th to be exact, is the Four Pillars Quartet by H.M. Long. Book 4, The Pillar of Ash, is supposed to be concluding out this series in January, and I have seen on the author's TikTok that this seems like it's the accurate date as well, so at least there's that. This is one that I'm really excited to get into. It's a series of companion novels. I believe we follow different protagonists in each series, and they look like they're epic fantasy. They also look like they have like slightly slightly different style settings as well. I'm really excited to get into them. And the covers are stunning as well, which is always just an additional plus. I'm not gonna lie, it shouldn't, but it does matter. So that one's going to be bingeable very, very soon. The one that everyone is anticipating next year, and it's coming as no surprise, at the very end of January, on the 30th of the month, we are going to be getting the conclusion to the Crescent City series. Book 3, House of Flame and Shadow, is going to be released, and yeah, it's a highly anticipated conclusion to a trilogy. It is also one that is supposedly opening up the Sarah J. Maas universe into a different direction as well. I have mixed feelings about this, but I am excited to see it concluded. Book 2 was a letdown for, I think, a lot of us, not going to lie, but I am excited still to see where it's going to go. Of course I am, but I have mixed feelings at the moment, but I will read it, obviously. Moving into February, we have The Empire of the Wolf by Richard Swan. The third and final book in this trilogy, which is The Trials of Empire, is coming out on the 6th of Feb. This one is a epic fantasy where we are following a man who is judge, jury, and executioner all in one. He kind of travels around the land to ensure that the king's justice is served, and we are getting it from the perspective of his apprentice, retrospect, like with hindsight, which I'm very excited for. I've heard really good things about this series. I've heard that it has a very interesting take on justice and on legal systems and how the two aren't necessarily directly linked. I'm excited. Richard Swan seems to have a decent sense of humor as well, so I'm glad to be hopefully able to read it soon. One that I did not know was a series until I was compiling this list is the Sworn Soldier series by T. Kingfisher. The first book came out last year, and the second book, What Feasts at Night, is supposed to be coming out just before Valentine's Day on February 13th. And this is a duology, and I think that they are on the cusp between novel and novella. I think they're novellas, but like pushing the limit a little bit there. I want to read more T. Kingfisher. I read Nettle and Bone this year. It was amazing. I just want to read everything this author has written now. I think that she's one of those that is just really addictive author that just once you've read one, it's like crack and you just want to keep reading. So yeah, I'm excited. The fact that it's a series. Also really glad that I didn't pick up this first book back when I thought it was a standalone. So pluses all round, really. Moving into March, and what better month for this series than Women's History Month? We have the Al-Maqsa duology concluding by Hirdir Elsbay with book 2, The Weavers of Al-Maqsa. This is apparently a very feminist duology. I am super excited to be getting into this one. There's been a lot of good buzz. It's not as hyped as I would like it to be, but the things I have heard coming out of reviewers is absolutely stellar. I love how feminist this series sounds. It is Arabic inspired. I am really, really interested to see what this author does when playing with feminism. I really am here for that, so I'm really excited to be getting into this series. In April, we have one that is contentiously adult. It's marketed as adult. A lot of readers have said it's adult, and then a lot of other readers have said, oh no, it's new adult. And I don't know if it's one of those where it's a younger female author and therefore it's got to be new adult. There's no way that it could possibly be adult, because I've heard people say that about the Poppy War before, which was just absolutely atrocious. So we have the Dark Gods series by Tara Sim with book 3, The Dawn Throne, supposedly coming out on April 1st. This is a series that sounds really cool because it's about multiple kingdoms that are normally at war with each other, but magic is kind of dying, and the heirs to each of the kingdoms all need to come together to try and save it, which always sounds really cool. I'm always here for an allyship and an unlikely allies kind of situation. I'm assuming it'll have some romance in it as well, which I've been on a romance kick lately, so I'm excited for that too. And the very next day, we get the conclusion to the Reaper duology by Rinchi Peiko. This is one that I think is a duology, but I am not 100% sure. Can't find anywhere that there is going to be a third book, and there's no mention of a trilogy, but no one's actually used the word duology. So it could be or it could not be, but from what I'm seeing, it seems like it's the conclusion to a series. And the Reaper series is Rinchi Peiko's adult debut, I believe, and it is a dark vampire series, which I am also always here for. I am loving the resurgence of dark vampires, and we're moving away from solely romantic vampires, which top tier. This book is going to be called The Court of Wanderers, and yes, it comes out on the 2nd of April. I have nothing for May. I have no idea why. It's like the universe did not think I deserved a birthday present this year, but I have nothing for May. So moving straight into June, on the 4th of June, we have the conclusion to Between Earth and Sky by Rebecca Roanhorse. This last book, Mirrored Heavens, coming out on the 4th, and I am really excited because we finally have an epic popular fantasy that is inspired by Native American culture. Just yes, please. Thank you. Goodbye. That's all I need to know. I'm super hyped for this series. I have been wanting this series for as long as I knew there could be a Native American inspired fantasy. Finally, we have one. Here's to many more. Going to the latter end of June, we're actually going to slip into sci-fi briefly here, and we have the Pandemonium series by M.R. Carey. M.R. Carey is a well-regarded author within dystopian sci-fi, especially for The Girl with All the Gifts, I believe, was one of their more popular releases. This one, Echo of Worlds, is the conclusion to the Pandemonium duology, coming out on the 25th of June. I'm wanting to get more into sci-fi. I say I love sci-fi, and I do. When I read sci-fi, I love sci-fi. But sci-fi is always more difficult for me to navigate. I don't know my taste in sci-fi as well as I know my taste in fantasy. Fantasy, brief synopsis. So I'm like, yes, that sounds like this for me. No, it can fuck off. That's about it. But with sci-fi, I don't know my taste as much. I need to read more so that I can fall more in love with the genre and discover what is actually to my liking. So I've decided I'm going to keep track of some more sci-fi this year, and Pandemonium is one of them that I am anticipating concluding. And the very last one I have on here, just pushing us past the midway through the year point, on the 16th of July, we have The Burning Kingdoms by Tasha Suri, concluding with the book 3, The Lotus Empire. This one is an Indian-inspired sapphic epic fantasy. Need I say more? Like, literally need I say more? That sounds amazing. It's one of the big 3 sapphic trifecta that has been coming out over the last couple years, with She Who Became the Sun and also Magic of the Lost, which I believe is also potentially concluding next year. I'll get to that in a moment. But, you know, it's been a great year for sapphic fantasy. Well, great few years for sapphic fantasy. And this one's finally concluding, and I can hopefully dig my claws into it. I really liked the Books of Amber series by this author, so I am, and I've heard even better things about this trilogy, so I am very pumped. So that was it for all of the series that have a date on Goodreads. Again, all of these were accurate at the time of my filming this. I don't know if they have changed now that you are watching it. I don't know when you're watching it. You could be watching it in 2025. I don't know, but at the time of watching it, this is the accurate dates that I have on Goodreads. Like I said, I question a few of those, but as it currently stands, that's where we're at. Now we're going to move into ones that are probable. So these are basically series that have been consistently coming out one book a year, or there's a lot of hype around the 3rd book coming soon, or like the concluding book coming soon, but there's just no concrete date on Goodreads. It could be that it's already got a cover released, or it's already got a title released. It's just we don't have an actual specific date as to when it's coming, which means that these are probably the releases that are coming after July, so they're probably the latter end of the year, so there's no fixed date for them just yet. One of the ones that I have on here is The Age of Uprising by R.S. Ford, and I believe it has an almost steampunkish vibe to it, where it's got machinery, but it is an epic fantasy. I am super excited to get into this. I haven't heard as much buzz around it as I would have liked, but the reviews I have heard are absolutely stellar, and they are very, very high praise for this series. I hear it's very innovative and very unique in its approach to telling fantasy and into world building, which unique is what we need more of in fantasy nowadays, so I am totally here for it. Another one that I am so excited for, probably one of the ones I'm most excited for on this list, is Gael Song by Shauna Lawless. This one sounds so flipping good. It is Irish mythology combined with Viking invasion of Ireland in a fantasy setting. What more could I ask for? Like, Irish mythology in an epic fantasy series? It's like I've been waiting my whole life for this. So yeah, I'm really, really pumped for this one, and I cannot wait for that series to conclude so I can binge the heck out of it. I feel like that's going to be the kind of series where I just disappear for a weekend, forget all responsibilities, including my own children, and I'm like, no, I'm just reading these. Everyone leave me alone. Another one that, based on the consistency of releases, will probably probably be concluding next year is the HMRC, or Her Majesty's Royal Coven series by Juno Dawson. This is a contemporary fantasy series that centers around the governing body of witches, who are a government department in the UK that is based on, I think that they govern over supernatural beings, as far as I'm aware. And again, sounds amazing. I believe it's a big FU to J.K. Rowling. It's supposed to be super feminist and inclusive and intersectional, and it's supposed to have a really, really tight-knit friendship, interesting conversations about female friendships as well, and growing up with someone. And I really, really am excited to see how I feel about this series because I've heard such good buzz around it. As mentioned, I do believe that Magic of the Lost by C.L. Clarke is going to be concluding next year. Again, has a very consistent trajectory of releases, so it seems only logical that it will be concluding next year. I have no reason to believe it won't be. We don't have much information on the third book yet. That's why it's on the Probables list. But I am really excited for this series because it is about colonialism and uprisings while it has a sapphic protagonist. It also talks about diaspora, about being indoctrinated into a culture that's not your own. It has discussions around racism and colorism and so many other things, as well as being incredibly political. So I hear that it's a bit slow and a little bit impersonal, but I'm okay with that. I just need one element to work for me. I need characters, plot, or intrigue. I need one of the three for me to be engaged. So long as one of those grabs me, I think I will be fine. Another one that I believe is supposed to be concluding the trilogy next year is The Burnished City by Davina Evans, the first book being Notorious Sorcerer. This is one I haven't heard as much about, but Orbit are really pushing it, and the reviews I have heard seem interesting enough. I am excited to get to it. It looks very unique with its covers as well. Another one that has intrigued me mostly based on the covers. One that sounds really good, but I've heard mixed reviews on, but that I still probably am going to read anyway, is The Tales of the Edge by Rebecca Zahabi, with the first book being The Collarbound. That series, I believe, will be also concluding next year because, again, it's had a release a year kind of trajectory, so there's no reason it won't be concluding next year. This is one that has a caste system. It seems a little bit along the Mistborn, Lycanius vibes when it comes to the society. I believe that if you have magic, you are kind of not allowed to use it. And yeah, I've heard good things about the first book, and then I believe the second book is potentially, it should have just been an extension of book one. So I am interested to see how people react to the conclusion when it comes out, to see if it's going to be something that I will want to read. Another one that I'm really hoping concludes next year, because the waiting has been killing me while all of you guys are out having fun, and I'll have fun later. It will be worth it. I will have savored it. But right now I'm watching all of you guys read one book at a time, and I'm like, I really wish I didn't enjoy books more as a binge reader, because I would definitely just be reading these books as they come out. And that is the Ending Fire series by Sarah El-Arifi, the first book being The Final Strife. This is one that I believe is quite dark and quite brutal. It seems like it has a very strong caste system. It also apparently has some female protagonists going on in there. I have heard some questionable language choices around the depictions of a fat protagonist that we have, but apparently that does kind of get rectified further on. So I am still interested to see how I feel about these, because obviously I am someone who is overweight. So I'm hoping that it won't cause me kind of anger. But yeah, I'm excited for the series because it sounds absolutely amazing. Another one that is potentially going to be concluding next year is The Nameless Republic by Suyi Davis Otumbawa. And this one is a epic fantasy that has, I believe, divine style magic. The covers on this series are absolutely gorgeous. It's also, I believe, an African inspired fantasy, which I'm always here for just other representations of cultures in fantasy. It makes everything so much more interesting instead of it just being another European centric one. So I want to support these authors. I want to support authors who are creating more unique and more diverse works. So I will definitely be buying it, and I will definitely be reading it. Another one that I am very interested in reading and doesn't get talked about as much on BookTube for some reason is the Vagrant Gods series by David Dalglish. This is one that had a date briefly on Amazon, and then the date disappeared for some reason. So I don't know. I believe it's supposed to be coming out next year, and this is one that looks like it's going to be a really dark fantasy. The cover looks almost horror-like, which very much intrigues me. I haven't heard really anyone talking about it on BookTube. I might just be in the wrong circles. That I'm sure if you've heard of it, then you know it's been talked about somewhere. But I haven't heard anyone talking about it, and I am very curious about this series. And the last one I have on the Probables is the last book of the War Arts series by Wesley Chu. This is one that started with The Art of Prophecy back at the end of last year, I think, end of 2022, maybe early 2023. I think it was the end of 2022, and has had some really nice special editions coming out. It's been getting a lot of buzz. Apparently, it has a really interesting dynamic. It also has an interesting take on the chosen one trope, and I'm excited for it. And it's supposed to be concluding sometime next year, I think, if it follows the trajectory it has held thus far. Now I'm going to go into my list of possibilities where it's entirely possible that these will get release dates towards the end of the year. There's no real reason why they wouldn't be concluding, apart from that they have had an inconsistent publishing trajectory. It's not just been your standard one a year, you know, every July you get one or something. So it's possible that they will, but it's also possible that it would be pushed back into 2025. One of those would be the Alex Stern series by Leigh Bardugo. This one hasn't had a consistent release schedule. I don't know if that's just because Leigh Bardugo has a lot more sway, so therefore she can just write at her own pace and the publishers just kind of have to put up with it. But the first book, Ninth House, came out a while back, and then there was a decent gap in between books 1 and 2. So even though book 2 came out at either the end of last year or early this year, there's no guarantee that the next one will come out in 2024, but it's entirely possible it could. I don't know. Another one that has had decent amounts of wait time in between releases is The Cities of Weft by Alex Phoebe. The first book came out, and then there was a wait in between books 1 and 2, and it's been a while. I think book 2 came out maybe 2 years ago now, so it's been a little while. So I don't know that, you know, again, it's entirely possible it'll come out next year because, well, it's been a while, but there's no guarantee. There's no title, there's no date, there's no cover, there's no real indication there's been any kind of movement in that series. Another one that entirely could be released next year in its conclusion would be The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. This one was initially self-published and then got picked up, I think, by Orbit. I think Orbit are the ones that are doing all the picking up of the self-pub. This is one that I think it's possible it will come out because it's already been written. It's just being edited, like re-edited to suit the traditional publishing style. So even though I think book 1 is supposed to be coming out at the beginning of next year, it is possible they will do like a double release, and at the end of the year book 3 will come out. But I don't know, because again, this is one that could technically do so because it's already written. So it would just be based on the publisher's scheduling when it comes to things like printing and marketing that would make the difference, as opposed to, oh, well, the author's not finished the book. So I don't know. It depends on where the publisher is at. I guess it also depends on the popularity of the series, whether or not they would want to get an immediate release for the next book. One that also has a somewhat inconsistent publishing pattern, and there is no movement in the series as well. There's no news about there's no title, there's no cover, so I don't know if anything is happening in this series next year, is The 5 Penalties by Marina Lostetter. The first book, which was The Helm of Midnight, came out, and it's one of those that is a mashup of horror and fantasy. It seems very dark. The cover looks more horror than fantasy, but apparently it has an awful lot of fantastical elements to it as well. There was a gap in between books 1 and 2. Book 2 came out, and then there is no further movement for book 3. So it could be concluding next year, just towards the end of the year. It does seem like it's a fall releases kind of series, which makes sense because of the dark themes. It tends to be better suited towards end of September, October, or November. That tends to be when the darker ones come out because that's the vibe of the season. But I don't know. I don't know if it's just not gotten a date yet or if it's not happening next year. Another one that potentially is coming out next year, the other 2 books have come out, but it doesn't have the most consistent schedule for releases either, would be Songs of the Drowned by Anna Stevens. I read Godblind by Anna Stevens this year, absolutely loved it, so I'm super pumped to get to this series. Books 1 and 2 are out, but there was a longer gap than your standard 12 months in between releases, so I don't know if that would mean that there would be a longer gap in between books 2 and 3. In that case, it's possible that this would be pushed back until 2025. Ones that seem unlikely to be concluding solely on the basis of the way the authors have been writing and the publishing schedule that they have had being really inconsistent. we are only waiting for one more book in the series. So if that book were to release, the series would conclude. It seems incredibly unlikely that that will be happening next year. The first one, obviously, would be Bloodsworn by John Gwynne. This one, it's understandable, and the author needs to take his time. And those of us who are fans of his works, we will just sit and we will wait, and we will give him as long as he bloody needs, because that man has been through hell, and there is absolutely no reason that he should be doing anything other than taking care of himself right now. So we wait, and when he's ready to come back, we welcome him back with open arms. And if you are the kind of person that has pestered or asked when the next book is coming out, and you know why the books are not out yet, fuck you, because that man deserves time, more time than anyone needs. Like, I can't imagine what he's going through. And then to try and be creative, go through the creative process with everything that he has endured. No, I'm sorry. If we have to wait 10 years, we've waited 10 fucking years for George R. R. Martin because he can't be bothered. We can wait 20 for John Gwynne. Like, he fucking deserves it. The next one I have is the Kings of the Wild, or the Banned series by Nicholas Eames. This is one that has an inconsistent schedule. I think we did get a title release, but I don't know if that means that it's coming out next year. It could. It seems unlikely. Maybe early 2025, maybe at the very end of 2024. He seems to have struggled with writing this one. From what I've seen in some interviews, he struggled with this one a little bit more. So, you know, it's one of those things. It's a creative process, and, you know, he's not overstayed his welcome so far. I'm excited to get to it when I get to it. Another one that I am willing to give a lot of grace to, because they're trying their hardest. They have a lot of projects going on, and that would be the Lady Astronauts series by Mary Robinette Kowal. I believe we're only missing one more book from that series. So whenever it comes out, I'm super excited. Gotta get into some more sci-fi, especially with some women protagonists. Gotta be here for that. And, you know, when they get to it, and hopefully it will be soon. The next one I have on here is the Masquerade series by Seth Dickinson. I do believe that the US have different release dates for Masquerade than the UK do anyway. I think it's originally published in the US, and it takes a while to come to the UK. So it's possible that it'd be released in the US and not in the UK yet. But the first book, The Traitor by Ruth Cormorant, came out a few years back. There has not been a consistent schedule in between each installment, so I don't know if it will be coming out or not. The same can be said for this other one, which is Dark Star by Marlon James. The first book, Red Leopard, Black Leopard, Red Wolf. I can't remember which way around the colours go. But this is a very, very dark African-inspired fantasy, and I believe that this is one that also has like at least a couple years in between releases. It's very literary, I think, so it does take a bit longer, I guess, to write. So there's been like a solid 2 year in between each installment. So I think the final book will potentially need the 2 years as well, which means that it's more likely to be 2025. And then the final one, a book that should come out, but that probably won't. There seems to be more buzz around it. You know, there's a cover and there's apparently a listing on Waterstone, so apparently it's coming out, but I'll believe it when I see it. And that is obviously the last book in the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss, because, you know, we've waited an entire eternity at this point. So, you know, I'll believe it when I see it. I enjoyed the first book. I did actually read it for a project, and I did enjoy it. I liked the first book, but I don't think that book is coming out anytime soon. I'm not gonna lie. Even with Waterstones listing it, and everyone's saying that it's evidence because Waterstone's normally really careful with their listings and stuff. And it's like, okay, but this is a series that has loads of buzz around it, so any buzz that you can create is helpful. So I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it, but I doubt it. But yes, that is everything from me for today. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you in another one soon. Let me know if you are anticipating any of these series. If you have read the existing installments in these series, do hype them up for me down in the comments down below, because I am super pumped for them already, and I just need to be pushed over that edge so that then as soon as I can get my hands on them, that's the first thing I want to read. But yes, I hopefully will hear from you again soon. Bye all!